What's going on, everybody? This is Island Hopper TV, and today we're going to show you the top budget travel destinations, most affordable places for you to travel here in 2023. Let's do it. First up, we're headed to Southeast Asia. This here is Vietnam. Now, the currency here is called the Vietnamese dong, and it takes 2,500 Vietnamese dong to equal $1. So you get an idea of just how big the currency devaluation has been for Vietnam. Now, if you want a high-end hotel resort, that's going to cost you around $100 a night for a luxury hotel. If you wanted to just get a hostel dorm, a normal cheap budget hotel, it's anywhere between $5 to $10 per night, pretty much across the country. Now, if you wanted a mid-range hotel, expect to pay around $20 and all the way up to $50 on the high end. And that's pretty consistent from Saigon all the way up to Hanoi and everything in between. Next up, we're headed to Mexico, where they use the peso. Currently, $1 equals 17.50 pesos, and the accommodation in Mexico is anywhere between $5 to $15 per night for a dorm or a budget hotel. And then for mid-range hotels, you can expect to pay $40 to $100 per night. Luxury resorts can get quite expensive and exceed $200 depending on where you're staying in places like Cabo or Puerto Vallarta, maybe even Cancun. But for the most part, you can find nice luxury accommodation for under $200 in most cases. Now, you can get food here for around $2 to $3 per meal. If you wanted a mid-range restaurant, expect to pay $10 to $20 per meal, and then even exceeding that for high end. Some places to check out are going to include Riviera Maya, the central area of Mexico, all the way to Oaxaca, and then up towards Baja and Puerto Vallarta. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Philippines, where the US dollar will give you 55 Philippine pesos to $1. There are cheap accommodation here as well, anywhere between $5 to $10 a night for a dorm room, and then $20 to $50 a night for average mid-range hotels all across Philippines. There is over 7,000 islands here. And if you wanted luxury resorts, they also have that in places like Boracay, and then other islands have some luxury resorts that can go well over $200 per night. Food here is also very affordable. You can easily eat for $1 to $2 for lunch on street vendors, but they also have high-end food restaurants that can cost you $10 to $20 per meal. Manila and Cebu City tend to be the most expensive. In fact, Manila is one of the most expensive places if you go to BGC, which is Bonifacio Global City. But beach resort here, bungalow, $20, $30 for one of these hotels on a paradise beach like this. Just find the island. There are many deals just like that. Next up, we're to Indonesia. Now, Indonesia has many islands just like the Philippines. In fact, it has more. Some of the popular places people like to go here are going to be Bali. They also have Kalimantan, Java, Sumatra, many different areas where you have wildlife like the Komodo Islands. They also have Raja Ampat. So this is an amazing place to visit. You can also see the beautiful islands of Palau in West Papua. The currency they use here is the Indonesian rupiah. It is 14,844 to $1. You can find cheap accommodation at hostels for $5 to $10, as well as mid-range hotels between $15 to $50. And then they do have high-end resorts in places like Bali. Indonesia is famous for its rainforests, orangutans, tigers on Sumatra, and then they also have beautiful underwater diving, some of the best in the world. The largest city here is Jakarta. Many people just stay 1 to 2 days and then go explore the nature. Next up, we're headed to South America. This here is Colombia. The currency they use here is called the Colombian peso, and it is $1 to 4,400 Colombian pesos. And then you have cheap accommodation that ranges anywhere between $5 to $10 per night for a dorm room, and then mid-level hotels are going to cost you around $30 to $60 in places like Medellin or Cartagena. And then you have the luxury resorts on places like San Andreas or maybe even in Cartagena that cost over $100 per night, but still not too expensive. Average meal cost here is $2 to $3 for street food, and then if you wanted a restaurant, it's anywhere between $10 to $20. Another affordable destination is the capital, which is Bogota. You can find cheap accommodation and food there as well. My favorites here are going to be Medellin and Cartagena, as well as San Andreas, the island. Next up, we're headed to India. Now, India is another affordable travel destination. $1 equals 82 Indian rupee. Now, you can find cheap accommodation here very easily in places like Delhi or Mumbai. And then if you go north towards the Himalayas, you have places like Rishikesh. You can also get cheap accommodation here for $5 to $10 per night on the low end, and then you can find mid-range hotels are going to be anywhere between $30 to $60. I have seen some expensive luxury hotels in India in places like Mumbai or Delhi, but on average you can get a nice hotel for around $100 to $150 a night, and then if you wanted luxury, they have over $300 a night. I have seen cheap meals here. You can get them for as cheap as 50 cents at times in some places. $1 is common, but $2 to $3 seems to be the going rate for street food. And then obviously they have restaurants where it's around $10 to $20. India is a very expansive country and you will need over a month to explore it. Also, guys, I want to let you know that we did make a best islands in the world video. If you guys want to check in the descriptions for that and watch that video if you love island hopping. Next up, we're headed to Tanzania. Tanzania uses the Tanzanian shilling for their currency, and it takes 2,350 Tanzanian shilling to equal $1. While here, you can visit the Serengeti National Park, as well as go to Zanzibar Island and even Mount Kilimanjaro. Accommodation here ranges between $10 to $20 per night for a cheap hostel or basic guest house, and then mid-range hostels and lodges can range anywhere between $30 to $100 per night, and then of course some luxury accommodation. But I would say overall, getting around Tanzania can be very affordable. Next up, we're headed to Nepal. The Nepalese rupee is 131 Nepalese rupee to $1. As far as travel and accommodation goes here, it is considered a very affordable country with $5 to $10 a night. Cheap accommodations, mid-range hotels range from $20 to $50 per night, with the more luxurious options being over $100 per night, depending on if you're in the Himalayas or doing some trekking. You can also get cheap food, which expect to pay around $2 to $5 per meal at a restaurant, and then even cheaper with street food. Kathmandu and Pokhara are some of the most popular destinations that you'll want to visit. Now we're on to Central America. This here is Costa Rica. $1 equals 533 Costa Rican colon. That's the name of the currency here. Now Costa Rica is more of a mid-level affordable destination. You can find some cheap accommodation in some areas for around $10 to $20 per night at hostels, but like I said, it is more in that mid-range, $40 to $100 per night for the medium style accommodation, and then luxury options can go well over $200 in places like Papagayo or even in Punta Arenas. While here you can also get affordable food between $5 to $10 per meal, and then when you're at an upscale restaurant you can expect to pay anywhere from $20 to $50 per meal. We did a full Costa Rica travel guide. I'll put a link to that below. Next up, we're here in Turkey. Their currency is called the Turkish lira. It is 19 lira to $1. Here in Turkey, you can expect to find a mid-level pricing for affordability, hotels and cheap accommodations starting at around $10 to $20 per night. And then as you go out into the country, you can find anywhere between $50 to $100 a night for mid-level accommodation, and then anything above that in places like Antalya along the Turkish Riviera. Food prices here are comparable. They're around $5 to $10 per meal. That's a budget-friendly location. And then if you go to restaurants, it can exceed that in some places.